Alright, Dreams Part 4. Now, I wanted to do a horror-themed one, but looking at the dreams, there's a whole lot going on in these dreams, and I'm not sure how I feel about just cutting out the scary part and putting them in a comp like that, so I'll think it over a little more, but I may not do one soon. We'll see. But if I do, then I'll probably end up saying the dream twice, so I can have it in the compilation, but also in the context of its own dream. Anyways, that doesn't matter because this isn't a horror themed one at all. This one's just a wacky, zany, random dream. Alright, let's get it. I was laying in bed trying to achieve sleep paralysis. I almost did it by accident and was having a pretty fun time trying to accomplish it. I started falling asleep. At first, I felt like I was struggling to keep my eyes closed, but eventually I figured out that they were closed. I was actually just starting to dream. So I stopped trying to close my eyes and let in the imagery. My ceiling was trippy and had a tiled text of sorts. I didn't try to read it as it was too soon to try and use my brain. If I did, I would have instantly woken up. I pushed deeper into dreams. At some point, I was in a fantasy world. I had a squad of 3, but one was missing. When we found her in the wilderness, I rushed her and I tackled her down while calling her names. She laughed and she smiled, but she said she didn't know who I was. This was because this wasn't my first go of things. I remembered living this life already, and this was like meeting her for the first time for the second time. I quickly thought of a way to justify this to her. I said I knew her sister, and she sent me pictures of her. As soon as I said that, I regretted it, thinking it sounded hella creepy. She didn't seem to think it was though, and shrugged it off. The other 2 friends were up this short cliff. The guy up top had a rope and he threw it down. At first I think I'm climbing up the rope, but it was just my body. My soul stayed behind for a second. Then before the girl followed, the guy tied the rope off. Fearing her inexperience, I thought that she would try and climb, pulling him off in the process. After she went up, I also went up and reunited with my body. It was getting dark fast, and there was this wooden gazebo structure that had a ladder to the roof. It was like made of tree branches and stuff, and it was like very natural looking. We went up to the roof to sleep, and I was excited to cuddle with the girl we just met. I almost fell over after climbing the ladder. My mind was too excited and working too hard. I was about to wake up. I stopped all action. One of my 2 friends asked if I was okay. I ignored them. I had to. My mind was blank and I just stood there waiting to get better. And I did. Although it felt very short to me, 5 to 10 seconds. It seemed a lot of time had passed in the dream. It was now completely night instead of evening. Now clear-headed, I remember that I could never cuddle with her anyways because of her species. I climbed down, being the only one left on the gazebo. I laid in the grass and watched the beautiful girl along with a bunch of other native people of the land standing in the grassy field. They dug their feet into the ground and laid roots, morphing their bodies into thin, long vines that reached about 5 to 50 feet. A very, very wide range of heights. They all looked to the bright moon, and off the flowers glimmered a reflection relatively bright, all things considered. The night was beautiful, space was dusty purple, and the ground was well lit. A white flower, not too dissimilar to that of these flower people, flew through the wind. It was reflecting a visible beam of light that the moon seemed to be perfectly shooting at it. It danced around and it shot all the flower heads just a little bit. I thought of the impossible likelihood of this naturally occurring, and said to myself this was proof of God. The flower shined its final light on my friend and flew down past me. I followed it not too far, but I ended up in this gas station in some dry-ass desert, completely forgetting about what just occurred. The transition was almost like turning around and bam, different story. Here, me and I think Robert were outside fucking with some ATM trying to get it to spit some money out. Either Nick or Ralph come to the door with a box of pizza and cheese bread, both from Domino's, and this cream-filled brownie that already had a bite in it. He held up the brownie, which sat on the box, and said, "Look at this nasty shit." And then I responded with, "Well, it actually looks pretty good." He handed it to me as we all walked into the store, and I took a bite. It tasted pretty much exactly how I thought it would. I handed it to Robert, who I think just put it at the checkout. The store was absolutely tiny and cramped. It had one long shelf in the middle and shelves on the perimeter. The checkout was some dirty-ass metal desk, and the device the guy pulled out to read our cards was actually just non-existent in real life. He had a laptop and a USB device plugged into this disc reader looking thing. I asked, "What the fuck is that?" He laughed and called me spoiled. I looked over to Ralph, or Nick, whoever it was, and I said, "Shit's ancient." I then told the crusty old man not to forget the brownie, which was now weirdly flat and no longer filled with cream. I wake up at this time, AC comes on. I struggle to get back to sleep, but eventually I do. I wake up in bed. My blackout curtains are open and the room is filled with light. I can't open my left eye all the way, and the left side of my mouth is numb and cramping. I can see the inside of my eyelid. You know how in real life it's just blackness or Sometimes it's red if there's light. In this case, there were blue scales like the chick from X-Men, and they wavered around and flipped around. Just like, you know, what was her name, Mystique? I sat up and thought, wow, I fucked with sleep paralysis and fucked up my brain. I freaked out and got up and I went to the den where my dad was getting ready for work. While freaking out and probably crying, I told him what was going on. He looked sad for me and hugged me. He was very short and old, and this made me sad. He turned and started to walk away, and he said something about taking me to the hospital. However, the symptoms started subsiding, and a switch in my brain was flipped. Actually, I think it's going away now. I went into the hall bathroom, and Dad followed close behind. I looked into the mirror, and the first thing I noticed is that I had Down syndrome and was severely overweight. I looked at myself, then my dad. I pointed at the mirror, actually kinda laughing. I said, "What the fuck is this?" I then see my eyes, which were empty sockets with exposed skin and muscles that I never wanted to see. I looked back at my dad and expressed my disgust, but then started asking him how I could even see without eyes. He wasn't acting like my dad at all, more like a docile, timid man. I wake up again. While falling back to sleep, I hear Nico playing on the floor next to my bed. After that stopped, there were rats under the bed tapping on the walls. I knew these not to be real and tried to pay them no mind, as paying them mind will wake you up. Eventually I fall asleep again. I'm in a very large cafeteria with these tall windows and lunch tables. Most of the tables were completely empty, but there are a few pretty tightly packed with people. When I gained sentience, I stood up. The teacher was quite young and pretty. I grabbed her and I tried to kiss her, but she pulled away. She ran off and I was confused because it was my dream, and people don't usually act like that in my dreams. They're mostly delirious and confused. Maybe it had to do with my level of sentience as the dreamer. I sit on a table where the butts don't go. I really typed that. And took a look around at the people. I felt pretty relieved about not being seen like that. I saw the teacher who was having a meltdown over in the corner. I thought it best for me to leave this place, and maybe if I act crazy, she'll be a little less sad. So I called her attention. She seemed afraid to even look at me. I called it again and she looked. I told her, check this out. I jumped off the table to another, and I ran straight through a wall like Kool-Aid Man. I was running through this liminal space-like series of tall buildings in a low texture resolution grass field. I knew I didn't have long to explore, so I was running inhumanly fast like car speeds. I made it to some building that I entered. At first the rooms were shorter and yellow lit, normal feeling, almost homely. Eventually I made it to some endless white sterile hallway. Near the start I started to wake up. I cleared my mind and blacked out for a second. When I came to, I was just standing there in the same place, heart racing. Was I scared? I didn't feel scared. After running some more, I found this one room that had a dog. The dog, like the environment, was completely white, even down to the color of its tongue. The exception being the eyes and mouth. It was one of the dogs with the hair. There was a toilet and shower in the room I found him in. I sat in front of him and started petting him. I again was too excited. I ran through too much dream too fast as well. My brain was processing too much. I settled down and cleared my mind. I relaxed. This time felt just as long as the last time, 5 to 10 seconds. I came to, and the dog had brought this glass bottle of some mango coffee drink. He held the thin bottleneck in his teeth and shattered it. Not much liquid spilled, and he chewed up the glass and swallowed it. The wide part of the bottle was still sticking out of his mouth. I grabbed it and asked to taste it. He let go, and I took a small sip. It tasted like 100% juice and 0% coffee. Dang, that's pretty good, I said out loud. I set it on the ground, and before the dog had the chance to start licking it up, like a bowl, I started having another waking up episode. I tried to clear my mind, but woke up anyways. In bed, I continued my practice and felt Dolly in my bed. No, I thought to myself, that is real. I want to go back to dreaming. Eventually, I gave up and opened my eyes. Dolly wasn't there, but there was an assortment of blankets I'd never seen before. I bundled them up and placed them against my face. I unfocused my eyes, and from the blankets, faces started to appear. Dad was going absolutely wild with the plates in the kitchen. I sat there looking at the ever-changing faces. I said, okay, time to get up. I got up thinking this was real life, but then said, wait, Dad shouldn't be home. This is still a dream. Like that was more of a hint than the faces in the unfamiliar blankets. I ran to the den through the living room and kitchen and kissed Dolly on the head a few times. My last kiss was longer, and while I kissed her, she grew her tongue out and stuck it right in between my lips and her head. I just backed off and looked at her like, what the fuck, why? She looked slightly ashamed. The end.
Hope you enjoyed. See you in a few days.